Greetings, aspirants. Hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the daily news analysis by CivicCentre IAS, where we try to discuss the important articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express, and the PIB from the UPSC CSC prelims perspective. Displayed are the list of topics which we are going to discuss from today's Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers. The first article says that in its first meeting after the Union Budget, the Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee decided to keep the policy repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for the ninth consecutive time. In this context, let us talk about repo rate, then we'll see how is it different from the reverse repo, and lastly about the Monetary Policy Committee. Firstly, talking about the repo rate, which stands for repurchasing option rate. It is a rate at which the commercial banks borrow funds from the Reserve Bank of India against collateral, which are typically securities like treasury bills, gold and bond papers. Know that it is managed by the Reserve Bank of India. So, it regulates the liquidity and controls the inflation by influencing the interest rates and the money supply in the banking system. If you have to talk about the repo rate versus the reverse repo rate, see, repo rate is the rate at which the commercial banks borrow funds from the RBI, but the reverse repo is the rate at which the commercial banks deposit funds with the RBI. Know that the reverse repo is typically lower than the repo rate and is used by the financial institutions to safely invest the surplus funds. Further, the repo rate manages inflation by controlling the borrowing costs, while the reverse repo rate manages the liquidity by providing a mechanism for the banks to deposit the excess funds. Now, moving on to talk about the Monetary Policy Committee. See, under the Section 45ZB of the amended RBI Act of 1934, the central government is empowered to constitute a 6-member Monetary Policy Committee. Significantly, the Monetary Policy Committee is entrusted with the task of fixing the benchmark policy rate, which we call the repo rate also, required to contain the inflation within the specified target level. If we have to look at its composition, the Monetary Policy Committee will have 6 members. They are the RBI Governor, who will be the chairperson. Then other than him, we have the RBI Deputy Governor in charge of the monetary policy, one official nominated by the RBI board, and the remaining 3 members would represent the Government of India. Further, the external members hold office for a period of 4 years. Notably, the quorum for a meeting shall be 4 members, at least one of whom shall be the Governor, and in his absence, the Deputy Governor, who is the member of the Monetary Policy Committee. Know that the Monetary Policy Committee takes decisions based on a majority vote, but in case of a tie, the RBI Governor will have the second or the casting vote. Significantly, the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee would be binding on the Reserve Bank of India. The next article says that the Union Home Ministry has amended a provision of the rules of the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 that required applicants seeking citizenship to submit a document by any government authority in Afghanistan, Bangladesh or Pakistan establishing their roots in these countries. In this context, let us look at the key features of the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. See, the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 aims to grant citizenship to illegal migrants from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan who belong to the Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi and Christian faiths. If we look at the key features of the Act, firstly, it amended the Citizenship Act of 1955 to make illegal migrants who are Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jain, Parsis and Christians from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan eligible for Indian citizenship. Now, who are illegal migrants? See, an illegal immigrant enters India without valid travel documents or stays beyond the permitted time, potentially facing prosecution, deportation or imprisonment. Those from these communities who entered the India on or before December 31st of 2014 would not be treated as illegal migrants, providing a path to naturalization. However, it exempts the Muslim community. Then, with respect to the citizenship in India, the Constitution of India provides for single citizenship for the whole country. Significantly, under Article 11 of the Indian Constitution, Parliament has the power to regulate the right of citizenship by law. Accordingly, the Parliament has passed the Citizenship Act of 1955 to provide for the acquisition and determination of the Indian citizenship. The next article says that as the situation in Bangladesh remains tense, the Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan on Thursday said that the instability in our neighborhood is a cause of concern and flagged the threat on the western and northern borders. In this context, let us talk about the Chief of Defence Staff. See, the post of the Chief of Defence Staff was created in the year 2019 on the recommendations of a committee of defence experts, which was headed by Lieutenant General D.B. Shekatkar. Remember that General Bipin Rawat was the first CDS in the country and was appointed on December 31st of 2019. If we have to look at the roles and responsibilities of the CDS, the core function will be to foster greater operational synergy between the three service branches of the Indian military and keep inter-service frictions to a minimum. Further, he also heads the newly created Department of Military Affairs in the Ministry of Defence. Next, the CDS will be the single point military advisor to the Defence Minister on the matters involving all three services, and the service chiefs will be obliged to confine their counsel to issues pertaining to their respective services. Then, as the head of Department of Military Affairs, the Chief of Defence Staff is vested with the authority in prioritizing inter-service procurement decisions as permanent chairman chiefs of the staff committee. Next, the CDS is also vested with the authority to provide directives to the three chiefs. However, he does not enjoy any command authority over any other of the forces. Notably, CDS is first among the equals. He enjoys the rank of secretary within the Department of Defence, and his powers will be confined to only the revenue budget. Lastly, he will also perform an advisory role in the Nuclear Command Authority. The next article says that the Union government has nothing to do with imposing the goods and services tax on health insurance premiums. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman insisted in the Rajya Sabha, maintaining that the issue is entirely in the realm of GST Council, which includes representatives from all state governments. In this context, let us talk about the GST Council and constitutional provisions related to it. So what is GST Council? See, the GST Council is a constitutional body which is responsible for making amendments on issues related to the implementation of the goods and services tax in India. Know that it was set up to simplify the existing tax structure in India, where both the center and the states levied multiple taxes, making it more uniform across the country. Now, if we look at the constitutional provisions, see, the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016 paved the way for the introduction of the goods and services tax. So the Amendment Act inserted a new article, which is the 279A in the Constitution, which empowers the President to constitute a GST Council or by an order. Notably, the members of the Council include the Union Finance Minister, who acts as the chairperson, the Union Minister of State Finance for the state center. Further, each state can nominate a minister in charge of finance or taxation or any other minister as a member. Know that the GST Council reaches decisions in its meetings by a majority of at least 3/4 of the weighted votes of the members present and voting. But a quorum of 50% of the total members is required to conduct a meeting. Significantly, the central government's vote carries a weightage of 1/3 of the total votes cast in a meeting. Then the votes of all the state governments combined have a weightage of 2/3 of the total votes cast. The next article says that the food inflation, with a weight of 46% in the CPI basket, contributed to more than 75% of the headline inflation in May and June, while the vegetable prices increased sharply and contributed to about 35% to headline inflation price gains in June, says the RBI Governor Das. In this context, let us talk about the headline inflation, core inflation, and lastly about the consumer price index. So firstly, headline inflation is the measure of the total inflation within an economy. It includes the price rise in the food, fuel, and all other commodities. Notably, the inflation rate expressed in the wholesale price index usually denotes the headline inflation. Though the consumer price index values are often higher, WPI values traditionally make the headlines. Then, talking about the core inflation, it is also called underlying inflation or the non-food inflation. So, core inflation is also a term used to denote the extent of inflation in an economy. So, this is a concept derived from headline inflation. See, core inflation is the change in the costs of goods and services, but does not include those from the food and energy sectors. Hence, this measure of inflation excludes these items because their prices are much more volatile. Contrasting to the headline inflation, it is the most often calculated using the consumer price index, which is a measure of prices for goods and services. So in simple words, you can say that core inflation is equals to headline inflation minus the food and fuel inflation. Now, what is the consumer price index? See, it measures the price changes from the perspective of a retail buyer. Remember that it is released by the National Statistical Office. Furthermore, the CPI calculates the difference in the price of commodities and services as food, medical care, education, electronics, etc., which Indian consumers buy for use. Additionally, the Consumer Price Index has several subgroups including the food and beverages, fuel and light, housing and clothing, bedding and footwear, etc. Significantly, the Monetary Policy Committee uses the CPI data to control the inflation. It was in April 2014, the Reserve Bank of India had adopted the CPI as its key measure of inflation. The next article talks about the budget being approved. The Rajya Sabha returns the appropriation and the finance bills to Lok Sabha. In this context, let us talk about the passage of appropriation bill and finance bills. See, in Parliament, the budget goes through 6 stages. Firstly, the presentation of budget. Secondly, the general discussion. Thirdly, the scrutiny by the departmental committees. Next, the voting on demands for grants. Then the passing of appropriation bill. And lastly, the passing of the finance bill. Significantly, the budget division of the Department of Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Finance is the nodal body responsible for preparing the budget. Now, let us talk about the passing of appropriation bill. See, the Indian Constitution states that no money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India except under the appropriation made by law in the budgetary process. This means that in order to enable the Union government to withdraw money from the Consolidated Fund of India under the demands for grants approved by it, the Parliament needs to enact the corresponding appropriation bill. Accordingly, in the budgetary process, after the demands for grants are voted on and passed by the Lok Sabha, an appropriation bill is introduced to provide for the appropriation out of the Consolidated Fund of India of all the money required to meet 2 aspects, which are the grants that were voted by the Lok Sabha, and second one is the expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. Further, no such amendment can be proposed to the appropriation bill in either houses of the Parliament that will have the effect of varying the amount or altering the destiny of any grant voted or varying the amount of any expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. So, the appropriation bill becomes an appropriation act after it is assented to by the President. Finally, this act authorizes or legalizes the payments from the Consolidated Fund of India. Now, let us talk about the passing of the finance bill. See, the finance bill means the bill ordinarily introduced in each year to give effect to the financial proposals of the Government of India for the next financial year and includes a bill to give effect to the supplementary financial proposals for any period. So, the finance bill becomes the Finance Act after it is assented to by the President. Notably, in the budgetary process, the Finance Act legalizes the income side of the budget and completes the process of the enactment of the budget. Further, during the stage of passing of the finance bill, a member of the Parliament can discuss the matters relating to general administration, local grievances within the sphere of responsibility of the Government of India, or the monetary or the financial policy of the Union government. But the following points are to be noted with respect to finance bill. Firstly, the finance bill is subjected to all the conditions applicable to a money bill. Then, unlike the appropriation bill, the amendments seeking to reject or reduce a tax can be moved in the case of a finance bill. Lastly, the Provisional Collection of the Towns Act of 1931, the finance bill must be enacted, that is, passed by the Parliament and then assented by the President within 75 days. The next article says that amid concerns over the shift of household savings from banks to alternative investment avenues, resulting in slower deposit growth compared to credit, the Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das asked the lenders to garner deposits through innovative product offerings and use their wide branch network. Also, he expressed worries over banks and non-banking financial companies not following regulatory norms while offering top-up loans on other collateralized loans such as home and gold loans. So, while announcing the monetary policy, the governor said that it is observed that alternative investment avenues are becoming more attractive to retail customers and banks are facing challenges on the funding front in the bank deposits trailing to loan growth. Notably, as of July 12th, while the deposits grew by 11.7%, loan growth increased by 15.5%. Further, he said that the banks are taking greater recourse to short-term non-retail deposits and other instruments of liability to meet the incremental credit demand. So, this may potentially expose the banking system to structural liquidity issues. Then, as per the latest RBI data, credit growth to housing, which is the largest constituent of the personal loan segment, accelerated by 18.2% of rupees 24.27 lakh crores in June 2024 from 14.8% constituting to 20.52 lakh crore rupees a year ago. Lastly, the gold loan outstanding jumped by 30.5% to 1,23,776 crore as of June 2024 from 94,872 crore constituting to 19.3% growth in June 2023. The next article says that as many as 80 constitutional amendments are being considered by the government with regard to the implementation of One Nation, One Election, says Arjun Meghwal, who is the Ministry of State for the Law and Justice. In this context, let us talk about One Nation and One Election. See, simultaneous elections or One Nation, One Election refers to the idea of holding elections for the Lok Sabha, all state legislative assemblies, and also local bodies which constitutes to municipalities and panchayats at the same time. Currently, these elections are held independently with timelines based on terms of each elected body. Historically speaking, this concept is not new in India. Simultaneous elections were common until the 1967 general elections. However, due to the frequent dismissals of state governments and the collapse of coalition governments, the practice of holding elections at different times emerged. Then, the proposal for the simultaneous elections has gained attention particularly since 2014, when the current government began supporting the idea. Notably, the advocates argue that simultaneous elections could reduce the financial burden on the government, minimize the disruptions caused by frequent elections, and frequent policy paralysis due to frequent imposition of the Model Code of Conduct. Further, to explore this idea, the high-level committee, which was chaired by the former President Ramnath Kovind, was formed in September 2023. Firstly, this committee recommended the constitutional amendments to enable simultaneous elections in two steps. First, aligning the Lok Sabha and state assembly elections, and later synchronizing local body elections with them. Additionally, the committee suggested creating a single electoral roll and election ID for all three tiers of the government. Then, in cases like a hung house, the committee recommended holding fresh elections for the remaining term of the affected body. Note that these recommendations aim to streamline the election process, though they also raise the concerns about the impact on federalism and implementation challenges. The last article of the day says that China has confirmed the discovery of a significant gas field in the disputed South China Sea with an estimated original gas in place of over 100 billion cubic meters. Notably, this discovery, known as the Lingshu 36-1 gas field, is notable for being the world's first large ultra-shallow gas field located in ultra-deep waters. Note that the Lingshu 36-1 gas field is located in the waters southeast of Hainan, China's southernmost land province. The CNNOC said, without specifying whether it falls in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. In this context, let us talk about the South China Sea and then about the shale gas. See, the South China Sea is critical and strategically significant body of water located in the Western Pacific Ocean, bordering the Southeast Asian mainland. If we have to look at the geographical boundaries, the northern boundary stretches from the northernmost part of Taiwan to the coast of Fujian province of China in the Taiwan Strait. Then the southern boundary is defined by a rise in the seabed between the islands of Sumatra and Borneo. Significantly, the sea is bordered by China, Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and Vietnam. It has connections to other seas also through straits. Those are, firstly, the Taiwan Strait, which connects the South China Sea to the East China Sea, then the Luzon Strait that links to the Philippine Sea with which is another marginal sea of the Pacific Ocean. Together, the South China Sea and the East China Sea are referred to as the China Seas. Now, if we look at the major ports, there are the Hong Kong port, which is a major international shipping hub, then the Singapore port, which is one of the world's busiest ports, and lastly, we have the Kuching port, which is located in the southern Taiwan and which is another significant port in the region. Then if you have to talk about the shale gas, it is a type of natural gas which is primarily composed of methane that is found trapped underground within the shale rock formations. Remember that it is considered unconventional because unlike the conventional natural gas, which is typically found in more permeable rock formations like sandstone, siltstone or limestone, shale gas is located in shale, which is a rock that is much less permeable. This means that the shale gas has smaller pores or spaces that contain the gas, and these spaces are not well connected, making it difficult for the natural gas to flow out through the shale rock. Consequently, shale gas is often spread over larger areas compared to the conventional gas deposits. How do you think this is extracted? See, hydraulic fracturing or fracking is a method used to extract the shale gas. So it involves drilling deep vertical and horizontal wells into the shale rock, which typically holds gas in horizontal layers. Then the fracking fluids composed of sand, water and chemicals are then injected at high pressure to create fractures in the rock, allowing the trapped gas to flow into the connection wells. Lastly, the gas is then piped away for commercial use. So we have discussed 9 articles for today from the Hindu and Indian Express from the UPSC CSA prelims perspective. We'll be back again tomorrow with another video. Thank you.